Welcome into Flag for Discussion, episode 60 for Monday, January 12th. My name is Fernando Mendoza, here as always with Jace Hatfield. Jace, we have finally made it to not only episode 60, but to the show that the most vindictive of our listeners have been waiting for. This is the show that everyone out there who has been listening to Flag for Discussion all year and loves us, but wants to see us in pain, has been waiting for. The show that Oregon is out of the playoff. Oregon got eliminated. We're going to react to the Indiana-Oregon game. We're going to react to Ole Miss, Miami. I mean, Jace, you have some thick skin. I have some thick skin. I think we have enough thick skin to recap these games pretty well and not show that much pain, right?
Yeah, the pain will be in the voice. I think you all hear it, but we'll give a real analysis. We'll give our best shot at trying to figure out what went wrong and where these teams are going forward.
Yeah. So much going on in college football, and I feel like I say that every podcast, but this is a massive national championship that we're going to preview in an upcoming show. Obviously, we got Miami and Indiana that if you had both of those teams squaring up in the national title at the beginning of the year, good on you. I don't believe you, but good on you. Man, I'm a little distraught from Oregon's performance on Friday, but I think we can get it going. Make sure you're following us on YouTube at Flag for Discussion, spelled out, on TikTok at Flag4 Discussion, and on Twitter at F4 Discussion. We're also wherever you get your podcast digitally, Apple Podcast, Spotify, wherever you get your podcast at Flag for Discussion. Jace, Miami goes down and beats Ole Miss 31-27. And I was driving home when this game was underway. And what I had kind of predicted, we were texting back and forth a little bit. I was using Siri. Anyone out there, I wasn't texting and driving, I was using Siri. But what we had just kind of predicted watching the game at the beginning was, is that right? Does Trinidad Chambliss have 8 passing yards with 7 minutes left in the second quarter? And then once the first half ended, Miami had like 20 minutes of time of possession. Ole Miss barely had any. I just thought at that point it was like, all right, this is, for lack of a better term, this is Mario Cristobal's wet dream. This is like the style of game that was happening. Just physical, time of possession, keep control, beat those guys up. And to be fair, I got to give credit to Ole Miss too at first. They didn't give up as many sacks as we expected them to do. They weren't sped up that much as we expected them to be. Where do you want to start with this game?
Let's start with the Miami side, because I like your Mario Cristobal wet dream scenario there, because I think that's what this was, right? Mario Cristobal, in a perfect world, is not going to play this beautiful, sexy game where your quarterback throws for 350 and 4 touchdowns with no picks. The box score, Carson Beck took 4 sacks. Ole Miss only took 1. Miami, they turned the ball over. Ole Miss didn't. Like, yardage was comparable. Miami had to throw 37 times. There's a lot of things on here that it looks like Miami would not have played a great game. But the matter is, and what Mario Cristobal wants, 10 penalties too. Sorry, Miami committed 10 penalties. What Mario Cristobal wants to do is win at the line of scrimmage and pound the rock. And in the first quarter, that's 4 yards a carry. In the second, it's 4.5. In the third, that's 5. And by the fourth quarter, it's 6+ yards per carry. And Mark Fletcher was exactly that. He had 22 carries for over 130 yards. Mar Brown, when he was in there, he had 14 for 55. Even like Tony had a couple carries. And Beck had the nice rushing touchdown. Every single time Miami needed to run the ball for 3rd and 2, 3rd and 3, 4th and shorts, they were able to do so effectively. That's the Mario Cristobal dream. The only real statistical difference in this game comes down to time of possession, which is usually controlled by the run game. And then 3rd and 4th down efficiency. Miami was 11 of 19 on 3rd down, thanks to the ability to run the football. And then they were 2 for 2 on fourth downs. Ole Miss was only 2 for 10 on third and never got to a fourth down that they tried to convert. That's just, it's not that there wasn't that many edges except for time of possession and the ability to convert in short yardage situations. Is that not what Mario Cristobal wants with his elite lines? I think that
Exactly.
played perfectly into his hands.
No, I want to take back a little bit what I said. I don't think that it wasn't that Ole Miss just played better compared to the other teams that Miami's beaten, Texas A&M, Ohio State, at defending, like stopping the Miami rush, because they gave up 1 sack. They had 6 pass deflections. And part of that, I said it earlier, like I gave them credit for it, and you should, because they were manhandling the teams they've played so far defensively, Miami. But Miami this game also had 4 dropped would have been interceptions. And so while they weren't getting Trinidad to the ground very often, while they weren't like fully showing their, I don't know, showing their gusto defensively, getting tackles for loss, getting in the backfield a ton, they were speeding up Trinidad for sure. And they were blanketing in coverage. It was quite a sight to see on both sides. And honestly, at the beginning, for 3/4 of the game, I just thought, man, Miami is going to control this game. They're not going to blow them out, but this is going to be this could get to an uncomfortable score, because let's be honest about it. Pete Golding could end up being the best coach ever. Like, could end up being the GOAT. In 30 years, you and I could be sitting here on Flag for Discussion episode 6,342. Golding is the GOAT coach. That could be the case. But for today, we're recording January 11th. That game was played on Thursday, whenever that date was, January 8th. And I just thought, with the way that game was going, with how Miami was controlling the ball, with the fact that Ole Miss couldn't get anything going, with the fact that Lane Kiffin had taken back 2 of his assistant coaches to not let them coach in this game for Ole Miss, with so many things that seemed like they were going against Ole Miss, I would have told you, all right, this is the point where these kids lay down. And it's just natural. It's not anything against Ole Miss or the players or the coaching staff or the program, but this is the point where the kids just see, all right, I've been pushing up against this brick wall long enough. It's not going to budge anymore. And this is the point where Miami ends up getting 6.5 yards per carry. This is the point where Miami ends up stopping us, getting more and more 3-and-outs, maybe forcing a turnover, catching one of the would-be interceptions. But Ole Miss came back. That was extremely impressive to me. I understand this is a team that Lane Kiffin built, but the way that Ole Miss's players responded to Pete Golding, with the way that staff clearly invigorated the players, that kept them in the game. And they had the lead in the fourth quarter. There were 5 lead changes in the last like 7 minutes of the fourth quarter. That was just an impressive ability to come back for me on Ole Miss.
Yeah, and they almost, I mean, shoot, they almost even had a chance to win it at the end there. Almost did. I thought a few things happened. I'm totally with you on the Pete Golding scenario. I think that gave a lot of confidence to Ole Miss fans around what the Pete Golding era was going to look like. It would have been really easy for Ole Miss to fold at any point in these playoffs after Tulane, and to fold against Georgia and fold and not put up a good fight against Miami. And Ole Miss would have had fine excuses, right? Pete Golding could easily made the excuses we were making for him, and he didn't, and Ole Miss didn't, and they really proved themselves. And I also thought Trinidad, it's unfortunate he won't get his 6th year of eligibility. I know he applied for that, didn't get it, so he's going to be going to the NFL. I thought he proved a lot of guts in this game. That was an NFL caliber D-line that he played, a really good defense. Like you said, yes, there were some drop picks. There's definitely a lot to learn from that game. But when push comes to shove, when Ole Miss needed him to make plays, he was. And, yes, he only took 1 sack, which is impressive to do. But, watching that game, he was under pressure almost every play, and his ability to step up in the pocket, he was pretty solid in making quick reads and making throws when he needed to. And then late in that game, he made every single throw that he needed to. Unfortunately, he didn't get his 6th year of eligibility, but you hope that this turns into an NFL position for him. They do get Kawan Lacey back. He had that really nice 73-yard touchdown. Other than that, a little bit bottled up, not because of him. That's Miami's D-line. 10 carries for 30 yards outside of his big touchdown. So that was also kudos to Miami's D-line, not just showing some versatility there.
I mean, you wonder how much the hamstring injury he suffered on that touchdown run ended up like affecting him for the rest of the game. I don't know if he suffered it on the touchdown run, but he suffered it. He was on the bike right after that. But
yeah,
that almost felt to me like it wasn't Ole Miss's coming out party. It was Miami busted something up in like the run fits, and Kewan Lacey's a really good player. And when he sees that, he breaks free.
Hmm.
To be completely honest with you, when that happened, the announcers were going crazy. They were like, Miami's had the ball for 18 minutes. Ole Miss has had the ball for 2.2 minutes and 32 seconds, and they have the lead. I'm like, that's not impressive. That was one play. Ole Miss Ole Miss was doing nothing up to that point, which makes you wonder, like, if they came in with a little bit better of a game plan. Not that they came in with a bad game plan. We saw what happened when Trinidad was playing instinctively, and that team ended up just was kept fighting. But you wonder, it's it's the whole like it might be too late to even say it now, but like if they could muster up any points in the first two, any more points in the first 2 quarters, it could have been a completely different story. The other thing is Miami. I think both of these teams describe the same thing to me. I didn't expect either of them to get this far, let alone the national title for Miami. I thought they were both good teams, and we talked about it in our preview show on Thursday last week. Of like, it's extremely impressive to get here. But Miami, man, like I'm kind of tired of all the people who are still pushing jokes at Mario Cristobal or pushing jokes at, like not believing in Miami. What is there about that team that's not to believe in? The defensive line is full of NFL players, like you said. The offensive line is full of NFL players, like you said. Mark Fletcher is an elite running back. They have depth there. Carson Beck, love him, hate him. He's in his 7th year of college football. He's a veteran quarterback who's been in these moments for years now. And yes, he has his blowups like he did against Louisville, or he did against SMU too. But he also has been the most accurate quarterback in the country, and he's not like trying to force anything. On that play where he scored a touchdown, at first I thought he was getting sacked. And then he just calmly got up in the pocket, tried to get out of trouble, and then saw, oh my God, the entire left side's open. He ran into the end zone, won the game from there. We talked a lot about Mario Cristobal off pod. I think there's just a little bit of maybe they feed off of the disrespect, but I think we need to get past the point of like Miami doesn't deserve to be here or isn't the best team in the country. They just got beat some teams to get here.
Yeah, I completely agree. It's part of it's kind of what we alluded to last couple pods. It's a part of the national championship or bust culture, I think, that's kind of starting to come up around fandom, where if it's not a national championship, nobody takes what you do seriously. And everyone's a fraud unless they win a championship kind of mentality. Because Mario Cristobal, like you said, they have the best offensive line in the country and a top 3 defensive line in the country. They have a veteran quarterback. They have a stud running back. Malachi Tony, one of the best freshmen in the country. This is a team that's going to produce 5+ draft picks this year and probably every year for the foreseeable future. They're going to produce multiple first-round picks this year. It's what they develop. They recruit really well. They develop really well. They use the transfer really well. They're well coached. They execute. There is not like he is a great coach, and you don't just stumble into a national championship in a 12-team playoff format. You just don't. You don't get lucky. There are easier paths. There are harder paths. But at this point, they beat Ohio State, who was a team we all thought were world beaters, and they are still, and they're great. They beat Ohio State, but they beat Ole Miss. Like what, there's not really much more I think that they could prove. And you bring up a good point, because I think Indiana is probably going to win this national championship. We'll break that down more, obviously, in the preview show, but let's say they do. I think this Miami team gets forgotten and gets laughed at. And I think people will think that they're vindicated for making fun of Miami because let's say they lose to Indiana. But no, like that's an Indiana team that's also amazing. This is a Miami team that deserves their flowers. They just impose their will on all of these teams in the playoff, and they are dominating the line of scrimmage, and that's everything else is falling in line. That's good coaching, really good player execution. I hope that if they lose to Indiana, I hope that that's not what people think is, oh yeah, they're frauds. Just because you lose to a really good team in the championship does not make you a fraud, but that's going to happen, unfortunately.
There was I don't know why I remember this, but I specifically remember sometime back early in the summer on one of our podcasts, we were talking about Miami, and I think I said it might have been you, that like I'm not a big fan of Carson Beck coming back without practicing with the team, because remember at this time last year he was in a sling just coming off of UCL surgery, And when he joined the team for spring ball, he couldn't practice with the team. So his first time practicing with his teammates in pads was fall camp. And I remember saying, I'm not a fan of this happening. Maybe this is a get your shit right kind of year for Miami. Maybe taking a slight setback and not winning's not always on a what's it called, a linear trajectory. They went 5-7, then 8-7-5, then 10-3. It might not be an 11-12 win season. I think that might be one of our first old takes exposed take we've had on this show, because clearly this was not a setback year for Miami. This wasn't a neutral year for Miami. This was a get right year. And you and I also discussed this after the game off pod. I think we found the reason for it. Do you want to have the Mario Cristobal conversation?
Go for it.
I think college football is primed for Mario Cristobal right now. And there's a lot of coaches right now who absolutely don't want college football to be changing the way it is right now. There's a lot of coaches who aren't thrilled with the portal or NIL. I actually thought early on with the portal and NIL, Mario Cristobal's superpower would go down a little bit, because coaches who aren't super dialed in with the X's and O's sometimes took a step back in college football because they weren't super great recruiters. But now those guys can go out and get really good recruits just through NIL or through like with their GM and whatnot. But Mario, I thought, was going to take a step back because he's obviously a college football coach. He has to be good at X's and O's, but he also isn't necessarily like, his calling card is recruiting. So I thought, okay, if you're taking a jab at what makes him a very effective coach, he might take a step back. And you and I had always felt this way about Mario. Really good coach, cares about his players, hardworking. The culture is really important. When he left Oregon, I know I'm rambling, but when he left Oregon, I remember when Dan Lanning got hired, the players were all kneeling or had their hands in a good position and whatnot for when Dan spoke to the team first. And some of the reporters said that's Mario might be gone, players might be hurt, but that's the Mario Cristobal culture. It's respectful, it's hardworking, give it your all. And we had talked about it, was like they might take a step back. I would argue that this is the best time for Mario to take a step up over everybody else in college football, because he prioritizes the two sides of the two position groups that matter the most, the offensive and defensive lines. And when he couldn't recruit a quarterback, develop him for 3 to 4 years, now he goes and gets the best one out of the portal, and he can do everything else well. I think college football isn't ready to have the Mario Cristobal conversation like you and I.
I agree. And yeah, you're exactly right. It's for him, I think his biggest weakness was going to be developing a quarterback. And I think that was always going to be what was going to hold him back. And Oregon, we never really got a chance to see him develop his own quarterback. They had used the portal with Anthony Brown Jr. And you know, he had the end of Justin Herbert, but he also wasn't the one that recruited or really developed Justin. He just got like the final version of him. So we've never really seen him have to do that. And at Miami, they had a lot of injuries, and they also used the portal with Cam Ward. In today's version of college football, from what we can tell with the transfer portal, a lot of elite, really good quarterbacks are entering the portal at a record, just crazy number. Same thing with running backs, same thing with receivers, even tight ends. Lately, we've seen it. But the two position groups that you don't see a lot of elite players enter the portal at is defensive line and offensive line, making it the hardest position to build through the portal. And to your point exactly, Mario doesn't really need the transfer portal. He'll use it a little bit when it's necessary, but he's much more inclined to recruit at elite level those two positions. And he has a really good eye for those positions as well. He's not just getting the big fish because they're a big star.
Yeah.
He has a really good eye for what makes you a good offensive lineman or defensive lineman. He will develop and work with those kids and turn them into first round draft picks. And in the process, they're going to do what they've done this entire playoff, and that's dominate in the trenches. And that allows him to shore up probably the two hardest positions to build in the portal. And on the flip side, then he can like the positions he struggles at recruiting and developing in the past, quarterback, receiver. Well, guess what the two most available positions are in the portal these days? Quarterback and receiver. And not just by bodies, but by sheer talent. Quarterbacks who were 5 stars and usually would sit, once they commit to a program, they're there for 4 or 5 years. They're now entering the portal if they don't play after a year or two, or they don't think they're getting paid enough, Receivers are in the portal left, right, and center. But the fact that Cam Coleman, Nick Marsh, like these are some huge names that were in the portal this
Right.
past year. Miami's in a really good spot. I think what they don't do super well is the most easy thing to fix. And the things that they do super well are the hardest things to fix, kind of lining them up really well for this portal era.
Yeah, if you think about it, I don't have NIL like evaluations in front of me, but obviously quarterbacks get paid the most. But there's 5 offensive linemen on the field. Those position rooms make the most money collectively out of anybody in your roster. So, like you said, offensive and defensive line players often don't transfer, especially not offensive line, because teams are smart. When they have good players, effective players, they lock those kids down at those positions first. I mean, the transfer portal is starting to look a lot like the NFL draft. Now, maybe not every year, but take the quarterbacks out. The best teams in the country are like, okay, there's a million receivers, there's a million running backs. I only need one spot. I'm going to go get the best guy. Teams that are doing really well right now, they're prioritizing starters and like stars. And I think Mario, the only thing that's going to hurt him is, let's say there's a down year at transfer quarterback, but quarterbacks available. Or let's say there's a year where like Shannon Dawson or Corey Heatherman, his coordinators leave and he makes a bad hire. That would be hurting him. But I don't expect Miami to go away. I don't think they're going to become these world beaters that are going to go undefeated every year. But this is Mario's formula. And I think it's just time to have the realization that, yes, he's a meme. Yes, it's funny. But one of the things that came into my head right away in that first half of this game was, I don't know why I remember these things, Jace, but I remember in Mario's first year in Miami, Miami goes to Tallahassee, gets blown out by Florida State. Trey Benson was on that Florida State team. Trey Benson, the former Duck who tore his knee up when he was an Oregon player, transferred to Florida State. Mario goes to Miami. And Trey Benson did really well against Miami in that game. And Mario said, if you see him, that's the kind of kid we're going for. That's the kind of kid that's going to be on our team in the future. And it's just really cool seeing how far in 4 years that program has gone from not being able to figure anything out in his first year, just trying to fix the culture at least, to now, man, look at all the NFL talent on that team. Before we move on to, I guess we should talk about Ole Miss. The Ole Miss, I don't think this is like a setting sun for them. I don't think this is Ole Miss is done. They're never going to be this good again. This was a pretty clear understanding and realization of, if your team's good enough, or at least if your team gets into the dance, they can beat anybody. And there might be a year like last year where Ohio State's just such a juggernaut that nobody was going to beat them. The Pete Golding era is officially here. They brought in Deuce Knight to play quarterback. Kewan Lacey's back. There's a lot of things that are looking up for Ole Miss next year. I honestly think one of the reasons they lost this game was because they had verbally admitted, and the broadcast said this, they don't trust their safeties in man coverage on third down. So they drop 8 into coverage and only rush 3. So that's one of the reasons Carson Beck had such a free run to the left to score that touchdown. And he was able to run for some first downs early on into this game on third down. That's the only downside. Like, Pete Golding's a defensive coordinator. That defense wasn't able to be very trusted for much of the year. So I don't think it's doom and gloom there for their loss.
Yeah, I don't either. I agree with everything you said. I think Deuce Knight will be a good. He was a good signing. I almost said hired. It kind of feels like that these days. I think that was a good player to grab out of the portal. He kind of seems to have the Trinidad Chambliss skill set from the limited Deuce Knight reps that we've seen. So I think he'll fit in well there. They've done well in the transfer portal. They're recruiting better than they have in previous history. So they're on the up. Pete Golding seems like a great coach. Like, I think between the players that they're returning next year and the players they've already grabbed in the portal, it's safe to assume they're going to be another good team. And if you stack a couple good years, you can really cement yourself into being a consistently top tier performing program. And it kind of feels like Ole Miss is in that territory now, especially in the SEC these days. I think the SEC has so much movement among coaching staff and players, and the days of Alabama being the top dog year in, year out, they might not be there quite as much anymore. Yeah. There's a little bit more opportunity, right? That there was zero opportunity for anybody to ever be a top 2 dog in the SEC if your name is not Nick Saban or Kirby Smart. Not that Kirby Smart's falling off by any means, but Georgia isn't quite as dominant as they were in the early 20s. And then obviously Alabama's just not in the same realm as they were with Saban. The door's a little open in the SEC, and Ole Miss is a team that's been consistently at the top the last couple of years. I certainly see them fighting for playoffs, fighting for SEC championships as time moves forward. So does the loss hurt? Absolutely. Does it sting? Absolutely. But you're going to be all right. Ole Miss will be back in these kind of positions in the next coming years. So they'll be all good.
I mean, the move of Kiffin's move to LSU hurt them so much, but also just the fact that he took back a couple of his coordinators that were already planning on coaching this game heading into this week. I don't know if you heard this. Ole Miss was using the coordinators they hired for next year to be position coaches and like to be around the team. Like those guys historically, traditionally would be coaching and prepping and recruiting for the next year's team. They wouldn't be on the field for the current like era of the team, which was wild to see. I know we got to talk about Oregon, Indiana, but I want to delay as long as I can. I just got breaking news. Do you want to talk about that?
Yeah, let's do a little live reactions here. What happened?
From Heather Dinich of ESPN, there is strong support for a 16-team college football playoff format to begin as soon as 2026 if Big Ten Commissioner Tony Petitti and SEC Commissioner Greg Sankey can reach a specific compromise. And there's a stalemate. She goes on to say there's a stalemate between the two power brokers, meaning that even with the majority in favor of the change, the playoff could remain at 12 next season. In November, they moved the deadline to completing the format for next season from December 1st of this past year to January 23rd, 2026. So we will know what kind of playoff we'll have 4 days after the national title game. But 16-team playoff. Sounds like there's people that are in favor of it now.
Be really interesting to see what Sankey, if he's going to try to hold out and say not unless the SEC gets 6 or however many he's going to lobby for, or if he's going to be willing to sign. And I think his leverage of trying to force 6 to 8 SEC teams in there is definitely not going to be quite as strong as it was going to be previously. Year. So yeah, so we'll have to see how that goes. It's in like, here's the thing with my immediate reaction with 12 to 16. 8 was the number for me. 12 was too much, but I hate the bye week. 16 gets rid of the bye week, which I like, but I still think it's way too much. If you want quality, like we're still going to get the nature of college football is we're going to get blowouts, and that's going to happen regardless. I think what I don't like about a 16-team playoff is if you think about the teams this year that were like, think about Texas and Vanderbilt and some of those teams on the edge, Michigan. I never really watched those teams this year and felt like, oh, I'm watching a national championship caliber, a high-end playoff team. Yeah, they're good teams and they show that sometimes, but not at any point was I like, yeah, this is the team. I don't want to have a world where we start letting them in the playoff and then the teams that finish 17, 18, 19, and 20 start complaining because they didn't make it. And then we're going to have to, then we have to include them. At what point is it just turn into 64 teams and just everybody gets a participation award? Part of what makes the regular season fun is the intensity of 12 games. Every game matters. Now it's like most games matter. Going to 16 is the majority of games matter. It's just, we keep decreasing the intensity of regular season games. We're decreasing the quality of opponents that are going to keep getting into the field. And the biggest issue in all of college football right now is the schedule, in my opinion. This, I think, just makes it harder because it's a whole nother round of games you have to go through, right? Depends on how they do it, but that's a whole nother slate. The issue right now isn't the number of teams in the playoff. It's an issue, but a bigger one is the schedule. Let's talk about that. A bigger one is the portal. Let's talk about that. Tampering. Let's talk about that. The biggest issue is not going to 16, but like I said last podcast, the big issue to us is based on entertainment and quality. The big issue for them is based on money. And going to 16 teams adds two more bowl games? That's a big increase financially, and that means more money in TV deals and that kind of thing. So it's annoying that that's what they're trying to fix right after the season, but it is what it is.
What infuriates me is you can go to 16, fine. But all the people who say the same, it's the same line every time. Look at the ratings. College football's never been more popular. Yes, I promise you, ratings aren't a like I do this today, so this happens tomorrow. It's a rolling like endeavor down the road. What happens today might not affect our ratings for next year. What happens with the 16 team playoff might not change who's watching next year. It'll change who's watching in 15. It'll change who's watching in 8. And eventually you're going to localize yourself as a sport to specific regions or fan bases, the ones who have the money. Look, I get it. It's a have or have not business. And having a 16 team playoff isn't the only reason that college football it has so many of the problems it has right now. But one of the things that I know we cannot let happen, and I don't know how much you watch or read message boards, but sometimes I'll check them out just perusing if I have like 10 minutes at work. And you know what I've been seeing a lot recently from a lot of different fan bases message boards? I'm so
Does
over
everyone
this.
think they can beat Indiana?
Well, there's the cocky people, but it's also this isn't college football anymore. This isn't fun anymore. It's once you wear away at the fabric of, and I'm not even talking about the playoff anymore. It's like a whole sport needing someone that's leading the umbrella of it instead of all these different conference commissioners. Because think about the Damon Williams situation that happened at Washington. How are Washington players or fans supposed to back him for next season? He willingly left on the day that Washington players were at a celebration of life for a Washington women's soccer player. He already signed a contract with them, and now you're asking them to be like, "Kumbaya, nothing happened. You're here to have fun and like enjoy it." That can't. There's so many people in message boards and Twitter and Reddit or wherever your community for sports is online that are saying, "I'm so tired of this." And this is not that like this isn't the college football I love, but it's like, how many more years of this can we take where there's so many changes and it takes you 15 minutes to explain college football to someone who's never heard of it before we actually start fixing some of the changes before instead of just adding more broken parts.
I think that's the great way to put it. It's the keep just trying to figure out how to add on nuances to make more money is the way I see it. It's just whatever generates that quick short-term burst of money is the way they're moving. And I'm with you. The quality of the sport and the health of the sport overall is declining from a long-term perspective from these rash, not well thought out decisions. They just feel like they're kind of done quickly because someone realizes there can be some money made and they make some quick decisions. They don't really think about the repercussions. That's how NIL got to where it is now, right? That's how the portal got to where it is now. There was just so many instances where we might have gotten a very healthy, normal transfer portal type scenario, or we got NIL to be what we all thought and wanted it to be, which was just them being able to profit off their name, image, and likeness. And none of those things worked out the way that we hoped they would or we wanted to, and they weren't well thought out, and the rules weren't designed very well. And the things like Damon Williams scenario, that's not just a one-off freak occurrence that's never going to happen. I can almost guarantee you what happened with Damon Williams, unless there's updates with the rules, that's going to happen more often. We're going to have we've already had
Absolutely.
kids in this transfer portal window who have committed to one school in the portal window and then
And
somehow
flipped.
within that time frame flipped to a new school in these like 2 weeks that they've had. It's a mess, and it's sad that there are fans who feel the sport is losing its steam. It's sad that we have like college football has been one of my favorite things my entire life. And because of how much I love it, it'll never all that my diehardness, my fandom, my love will never go away. But I can't fault anybody who looks at the sport and says, yeah, it's passing me. Coaches have done it. Fans are now doing it. It's the long-term health of the sport is in danger because of things like let's just go to a 16 team playoff. Oh, well, then let's go to a 24. It's these just not well thought out decisions. And we've been saying the NCAA is incompetent for years now. I mean, everybody has. And it's just, man, they just keep proving us right. But it's frustrating because there's nothing any of us can really do about it either, which is the hardest part of it.
I'll cap it on this. Everyone who has said the same stuff that Jason and I have had for years now has used boxing as an example. Apparently, before our time, Jace is like 27. I'm 19. But before both of our times, I'm kidding. We're both the same age. But before both of our times, boxing was massive. Not that it isn't big now, but compared to what it used to be, it's a shell of itself in terms of fandom, popularity, ratings. And this example, like Josh Pates of the world uses, I love boxing. I loved it then. I love it now. But the same arguments people made then are look at the ratings. Everything's going well. That means the sport's healthy. No, it's a band aid. What you're getting right now is not a reflection on how healthy your sport currently is. It's how healthy your sport was 3 to 4 years ago, 5 to 10 years ago, or the traditions that have built it up to now. Eventually, something's going to crash or you're going to fix it. I have one more breaking news. I didn't plan for this, but this has something to do with Ole Miss. From Pete Thamel. Lawyers for Ole Miss quarterback Trinidad Chambliss plan to file suit against the NCAA this week in state court in Mississippi for a preliminary injunction to secure Chambliss's eligibility for 2026. Lawyer Tom Mars will work with noted Mississippi trial lawyer William Liston. Mars told ESPN that they've worked most of the weekend preparing a complaint for a preliminary and permanent injunction on behalf of Trinidad Chambliss. We expect the lawsuit to be far more detailed and documented than other eligibility lawsuits have been filed in the past year. Therefore, considerable work needs to be done before we'll be prepared to seek an injunction that would allow Trinidad to play next season.
Wow.
I'm not a lawyer type. I'm not a legal type. I don't know half of what that meant. All I know is they're trying to get Trinidad another season. And I also can tell that they're not ready yet with their available paperwork and argument to go before court. So at some point, I think Trinidad's just got to make a decision on you got to enter the NFL draft. You can't kind of drop out of that. There's a deadline for that, especially if you're going to join the combine and whatnot. But wow, Ole Miss might be getting their quarterback back. I don't know. I've seen too many of these type of scenarios in the last couple of years of like the Diego Pavia thing ended up working out for him, but I don't know how many more of these are going to be working out for them.
Yeah, it feels like they just coin flip and they say yes or no. The other hard part, like the transfer portal closes soon. If you're Deuce Knight and you were hoping to go to Ole Miss for playing time, if Trinidad gets this, but the portal's closed, then I guess you're going to have to back up next year. This just adds to the hilarious, like it's so on par with us talking about the NCAA and all of that to then hear a headline of this guy may or may not play, and we're not going to find out in a timeline that's useful for anybody. There's a chance like he could be like, what are the rulings if they say, oh yeah, he can come back, but he's already been drafted? Like, what if the court system doesn't respond until May and he's already like, I don't know, we pick any random NFL, he's already a Raven for, like it's just so interesting. That's so classic.
It would be kind of crazy if the Ravens drafted him. Where's Lamar at that point?
He's backing up Lamar.
No, call me crazy. I think Trinidad might have shown enough to entice the Jets if Dante Moore doesn't leave. We've seen a lot happen in NFL drafts in the past with guys working their ways up from lower rounds to higher rounds. All right, we've delayed this long enough. Not all our fault. We've had actual 2 breaking news topics to talk about. But Jace Hatfield, Indiana humiliated Oregon 56-2 on Friday night. Dude, I was sitting down.
Let me fix that headline for you real quick. The headline should be Oregon humiliates Oregon. That was all self-inflicted wounds. All right, continue.
Fair. You know you're good when the entire internet spends the next 3 days trying to figure out how you're cheating. Indiana has people claiming have you seen that? Like Indiana has people
not been on social media since the loss.
Okay, so there's been a lot of people who've already brought up one of their defensive quality control staffers who has like a certificate in like cybersecurity or something like that. And they're pointing at him because Indiana, against some of the best teams in the country, have had a bunch of interceptions on the first drive of the game. And it happened again on this drive. D'Angelo Pons jumped the throw from Dante Moore on the first play of the game. returned it back for a pick six. There's people that are basically saying like, and there's like legit reporters saying, I'm not saying they are, but Indiana plays so tight-lipped and like tight knit. They don't make mistakes. They play so like that. It almost feels like they're cheating. It almost feels like they know what play you're running, what play, who's the target. Like it almost feel like they know everything. I have to make it clear. I don't think they're cheating, but you know you're good when the internet spends 3 days after you play saying, "Oh, that seems weird. How do they know?" Look, this is was a completely different game than we both expected. We both predicted and projected Indiana to beat Oregon. I could not have, in any sense of my imagination, picked 56-22. Oregon spots Dante Moore specifically spots Indiana with 28 points. Pick six on the first play, has a ball go off of his running back, fumbles another one. And by the way, there weren't just fumbles like on Indiana's on Indiana's side of the ball. It was inside Oregon's 10. So Indiana just gets the
Yep.
ball. It's so funny. You look at the, and I'm sorry, I'll let you speak, but you look at the final stats. Oregon had more total yards. They had more passing yards. They had less rushing yards. They, in the first game against Indiana back in October, I think they went like 3 for 14 on third down. This game, they went 8 for 13. So much appears on paper to be good on Oregon's end of it. Indiana blew them out.
Yep. You can't spot a great team more than 10 points. Even 7 points is tough to beat a great team. Yeah, Dante Moore spotted Indiana 28. Just free points. Like you said, pick six, turnovers in their own territory. And like you said, it's a relatively even game. I thought Oregon played well offensively outside of that. When they, like early in the game before Oregon was making those mistakes, they were hanging in there toe to toe. It felt like they were going to keep it a game. And it was just, they just kept shooting themselves in the foot. It's so frustrating because that was the issue against Texas. The offensive issues from Texas Tech lingered into this game, and there's really not many excuses. We said it coming into this game, Indiana was going to play perfect, and they did. Oregon needed to play right up there with them, and they could not have picked a worse day to play nowhere near them. And that's what happens. You lose by 34 points, and it sucks because 28 of those you handed for free. Could have been a completely different game if they don't do those things, but a lot of what ifs in the world. Something interesting to note, too, I got to give Indiana a lot of credit for. Their ability, and I've been saying it all year, but I'm going to highlight it again. Their ability to make every single big play is unbelievable. They were 11 of 14 on third downs, and they had a lot of third and longs. A lot of those were 3rd and 7, 3rd and 8. And every single time they got into one, it was just, I'm going to throw a 50-50 ball to Eli Surratt, and he's going to catch it. I'm going to throw, I think Indiana is like 60 for 60 on 50-50 balls. Like they catch almost 100%, it feels like. And that happened in this game. Oregon had good coverage, just Indiana was making every big play. And that was a huge part of this game as well. Not only Oregon shooting themselves in the foot, but every time there was a huge play, Indiana needed it, Indiana got it. Every time Oregon's defense needed a stop, needed 3rd and 8, they just need to stop. They never got it. Mendoza's ability to slip out of 2 or 3 sacks and find his way for a first down is incredibly impressive. That killed Oregon a few times. I could go on and on. I'll stop there for now and hand you back the mic here.
So I think when the pick six happened, we were like, oh God, here we go again from what happened last time against Indiana. But also in our previous show, you and I both talked about it, saying a lot of this is on how Dante Moore responds. Because Dante Moore, after his first couple of hits against Indiana in October, when he couldn't, like when Indiana was disguising their blitzes so well, the offensive line, running backs, everyone who's supposed to be there in protection couldn't figure it out. Dante started getting a little hesitant with his throws. You read the stat in our past show that his total time to throw went up by like 0.04. And that might not sound like a long time, but in the grand scheme of things, when a defensive lineman is rushing at the quarterback, that's a damn lot of time. And last time there were also many people who broke down film of the Oregon Indiana game the first time around who said, yeah, there was clearly something wrong with how Dante was seeing the field, or he was getting too hesitant. And it's clear he was getting hesitant because in game one, many people who broke down tape, many people who just cut clips up of the game said this receiver's wide open, this slant's open, the deep shot's open, the guy's open downfield, and Dante is not throwing the ball. He gets hesitant, and we saw that come back against Texas Tech. I think it was 4th and 1, play action pass. Kenyon Sadiq streaking down the middle of the field for a touchdown, wide open. Dante's not even remotely thinking of throwing the ball. I'm not, for whatever reason, saying Dante Moore is a bad quarterback, but there's no doubt in my mind he needs to come back to college for one more year, or at least one more year, because I think he's a retro sophomore. I think he could probably come back 2 more years. There's no doubt in my mind he needs to come back and work on some things, because let me tell you this, those windows get smaller when you play for the Jets or when you play in the NFL regardless. And just like the first time around against Indiana, this time around, I've been on social media since the game on Friday. There were multiple plays to be had. Go look at the pick six. I know that play clearly was designed for Dante to go to the out route on the left side. The receiver on the right side, wide open. Dante, that's clearly designed for the left side. I get that. But there was DeCorian Moore got his first touch in the third quarter. Kenyon Sadiq barely got touches until the third quarter. When you are an offensive coordinator whose entire motto, and look at Will Stein's Twitter page now, it says feed the studs. And DeCorian Moore and Kenyon Sadiq, who are your two best receivers, didn't get the ball in until the third quarter. That's an indictment on how you prep for the team. Now we'll have the conversation on the coordinators and their impacts because they're both leaving. But I have to just say, there's no doubt Dante Moore needs to come back for another year. There's someone needs to get into his head of dude, you got to stop thinking. And that's so hard. It might be like a sports psychologist, but you have all the arm talent in the world. You can hit it anywhere you want. You have arm strength and you can place it anywhere you want. You have to let go of the ball because there were multiple plays that could have been made and he just didn't make them. The one last thing before I finish my ramble, if you want to see how good Indiana is, one of the reasons they are is not just because Chris Signetti is a good coach, is not just because most of his team has been together since they were all at JMU together a couple years back. Fernando Mendoza, the quarterback, he's in his 4th year. Roman Hemby, he's in his 5th year. Black, the other running back, he's in his 6th year. Then we got year 6, year 4, year 2, year 4, year 4, year 4, year 5, year 5, year 6. That's your offense. One guy who has been with the program for 2 years or less. And then on your defense, year 5, year 5, year 4, year 2, year 2, year 4, 4, 3, 4, 3, 6. One of the reasons they're so good is not only because they've been together, they're extremely veteran. They are buttoned up. They're dialed in. Their coordinators do a great job coaching, and they had you hit the nail. You had the best preview of this game on Thursday last week. Oregon's a really damn good football team. Indiana's a really damn good football team. There's a million ifs about Oregon. There's no ifs about Indiana.
Yeah, and to expand, a little bit more about what this game I think shows moving forward and just in the grand scheme of college football. I think you're going to, as long as the schedule stays the way that it is, and I think it will for at least another year or two, the biggest key to me come the postseason is going to be distractions. Teams with a lot of it's really hard to mitigate distractions for any time in any team environment, let alone when your team is young, let alone when this is your 4th straight week of traveling across the country twice a week. And when you have coordinators gone to other teams, when you have transfer players debating if they're going to transfer out or stay here, you have players debating if they're going to go to the draft or stay here. You have players debating, what's best for their future. You have coaches trying to figure out how to help their future schools out and also close things out here. When you have so many distractions as a program, it is going to become increasingly more difficult to get these young football players to play focused as a team as a whole. And not only the players, but coaching staffs to get game plans that are focused and well thought through. You could tell Oregon's very sloppy on both sides of the ball game plan wise. You could tell offensively, Will Stein just didn't put in the amount of time and effort to create a creative, well thought out game plan. It was the same game. it felt like he just kind of recycled the same generic game plans from the last few games and try to roll with it. You could tell defensively, they just kind of ran out the same generic defense they ran against Indiana the first time, hoping it would miraculously work this time around. Newsflash, in neither way did the game plans work. And on the opposite side, I talked about this with Indiana. They had no distractions. Every single veteran on this team, they knew it was their last year. So they know they're going to the NFL next year. They're not distracted by an NFL decision. Portal, they only have 4 players enter the portal. They're not distracted by players knowing they have to enter the portal or thinking that they can or can't. And then coaching, they retained all their coaches. All their coaches were able to focus on winning these football games. And when you have that sort of lack of distractions, that common path forward, everyone's focused and in the same boat, the combination of that and being really elite makes you unstoppable. And these are 2 teams that I truly do think they showed it in the drives where Oregon didn't turn it over within the first 2 plays. Oregon went down the field and scored pretty easily on the drives where they didn't turn it over immediately. And on the other side, I thought they did a really good job against Indiana until I think Indiana converted 10 plus 3rd and 5s or longer. And that's just, usually that just doesn't quite happen. And talent-wise, I thought Oregon was there. It was distractions. Oregon played like a team that was distracted in a million different directions. Indiana played like a team that was incredibly focused, and that was the outcome you get. I think moving forward, coaches are going to start learning. It's not about necessarily maybe having the most stars. Might not be about even having the best talent. It might just be, how can I be as least distracted as possible? I think Miami's a team kind of similar to Indiana here, where they've had very few distractions coming into this playoff, and look at where they're at. Ole Miss is a team with a lot of distractions coming in. They ended up losing. Oregon, a lot of distractions. They ended up losing. Texas Tech, decent amount of distractions. They got smoked in the bye week. Alabama, a lot of distractions. They had a lot of players with portal and NFL decisions. They get blown out. It does kind of, I think that Dan Lanning from last year to this year talked a lot about, he said the issue Oregon had last year was they peaked too early. This year, he was really adamant about peaking late and getting better as the season goes on. I think next year it's going to be those things are true, but it's going to be, okay, how do we limit distractions coming this point in the season? And I think that's going to be the next evolution of teams in college football.
Right. And I think it's the same as like your ifs argument, but distractions argument. It's how do we make sure that all these teams have as little on their plate as possible other than football itself. And the teams that are around longer in the playoffs, at least now, are showing that they have very little to, if any, no distractions. But yeah, you're right. Last year or this year, Dan Lanning was saying, I got to figure out how to get my team to peak late. I think you could argue next year that's going to be the same goal. But instead of saying, I'm going to limit distractions, I think he's going to reflect on this year saying, we were going to peak late until I left the cap too loose on the kids jumping in the portal, on the coordinators being allowed to stick around. I wonder next year how many coaches are going to let coordinators who left the program stick around. Not that Tosh Lupoy, it shouldn't be. Yeah, it should be 0, because especially when you are, think about it like this. If you're Will Stein, you are one of the brightest offensive minds in the country, and you are in the playoff, and you won't really get judged for how Oregon does anymore. Like, theoretically, yes, Oregon fans will come in here and start yelling at you, which they have after that loss, about how you cost them the game. And it doesn't matter. You've already earned your next job, right? So you're Will Stein. You've already earned your next job. You're basically sticking around Oregon because that's what you're paid to do right now, but you technically don't have to. But you're at a program that has all these 4 and 5 star kids who aren't playing because there's 4 and 5 stars ahead of them. Man, wouldn't it be a dream if you're Will Stein, if you're Tosh Lupoy, to be like, so you're telling me I can recruit without leaving my building? Like, I can inherently recruit. I'm not saying they did, but Oregon's lost upwards of over 20 kids to the portal in the last week. And about 15 of them were today that jumped into the portal, or like 10 of them were today that jumped into the portal. Some of it obviously is just because the season ended. Kids are finding out their role on next year's team. They're having their exit interviews, so on and so forth. some of it is Oregon getting their defensive line. Mind you, we'll talk about that. But Oregon just announced most of their starting defensive line is all coming back next year. A lot of it, man, could be like, how many of these players go to Tosh Lupor and like Cal or will sign at Kentucky? Not saying that they were completely vindictive, but that's their job. They're not judged anymore by how they did at Oregon in this game. Like, they don't have to worry about that. I guess that's what I'm trying to say. I'm rambling so much this show,
Yeah.
but they're
It
not judged
adds to the
anymore.
distractions. Yeah, it adds to the distractions. It's when you're fighting for your dream position, you have to put that on film. And when you have it, you don't have to worry about that anymore. And I think it adds to the distractions. It's that first week you have the Kentucky job, it's probably really easy to say, whoa, I'm going to be hands off. I'm focused on Oregon. Well, then you win a playoff game, then you win a second playoff game, and then all of a sudden it's like, oh, I can do this. Yeah, let me go out and recruit a little bit. Transfer portal's open. Let me go out and find some guys. It's limiting distractions, and it's a lot of coaches have alluded to it. The schedule is the biggest issue. Not having 12, 16 teams is not going to solve our problems. The schedule is the issue, and this is exactly why. And it's going to come down a lot of years. I think teams are going to try and figure out ways to be as least distracted as possible. One of those ways is going to be trying not to have coordinators that are going to leave, right? Teams are going to try really hard to try to keep coordinators long term.
But how do you do that?
We'll see how that works out. Exactly. I don't think that that's going to be done in any beneficial way. And then you also look at it with players, right? I think maybe when you have young talent, they have to make the decision to go to the draft or stay in college because they're young and they're going to be drafted. Or they're going to have to say, I don't think I'm going to play right away and I want to play right away. So I'm going to enter the portal mid-playoff run. Teams are going to start prioritizing 6th-year seniors, 5th-year seniors, guys who teams are probably going to start saying, I want you, but I want you to know I only expect you to be here 1 year. It's going to be detrimental to young talent. Teams aren't going to see you as valuable anymore because if they have to worry about you entering the portal super quickly or you entering the draft early and having to think about that during a playoff run, that could be the difference between winning a national championship and getting blown out. Limiting those distractions is going to be what's so key moving forward in college football, and especially in a 16-team playoff. That's just, I have to imagine the craziness that is what is college football right now is going to be just even more amplified with 4 more teams into the mix. So it'll be interesting to see how things go moving forward. My recap or my cap on this will be gutting loss for the Ducks. Worst game possible to have, your worst game. Super frustrating for a lot of the players to end their college careers like that. However, it's a young team. Looks like the starting core is all going to be back. And I'm with you on Dante Moore. That was the game. If I'm an NFL team and I watched that game, there's no way in heck that I think that he is QB1 of my future after watching that. I think for the sake of his future and the sake of whatever team he ends up on in the future, at least one more year at Oregon.
I think, yeah, if I was an NFL team, there's one guy other than Fernando Mendoza that I would call right now, and it's Curt Cignetti. Not because he would ever leave. He's got a pretty good gig now at Indiana, making good money, and his coordinators are all with him and have been with him for a while. But if you think about it, what are the makings of a really good coach? Like toughness,
game plan, toughness,
physicality, X's
culture.
and O's. Sure. I'll argue one of the things that we felt about, and I'm in no means comparing him to Nick Saban, or like there was a part of like Curt Cignetti that I was like, how much of this is 2023 DeBoer? Like, he's a really good coach, but everyone in the media is making him out to be the best thing since sliced bread. There's an aspect of Curt Cignetti to me that he can beat you with his team, but if you just swapped rosters, he can also beat the same. He can beat his own team with your roster as well. Like, he is such a good coach that it doesn't matter.
Feels true with him.
Like, I think that's the type of coach that he is, and that is like the makings of not the GOAT coach, but one of the best coaches we've seen. And he just hasn't had the hardware yet, and we'll have an opportunity to get it next year. As for Oregon, as I mentioned, most of their defensive line backups enter the portal today, Sunday, January 11th. I almost said June. I don't know the months of the year, Jace. Those at home, this is the second take of this show because I started it by saying it's December. Most of Oregon's like backups have entered the portal at this point. Oregon's going to go into next year However, with the best defensive line in the country, if Dante Moore comes back, a top 3 quarterback, they'll have, it's not official yet, but if the running backs that are freshmen come back, a top 2, 3 running game, Oregon's going nowhere. They got to shore up some of the problems on the offensive line. They got to get some more depth, and I expect it to keep getting better. One thing for anyone hating on Dan Lanning or Dante, Dan Lanning's 39, you guys. Cincinnati's 63, and not that I understand it's only Chris Cincinnati's second year at Indiana, but there's just some inherent natural things that coach learns in 30 more years of coaching experience about the game that like Dan will learn and he will get better at. I thought all the fans who were saying he's the next James Franklin are preposterous. He already has more wins against top 5 and top 10 teams than James Franklin does.
I was going to say he's over 500 against top 10 teams, and he's 3-3 against top 5 teams, that means he's an above average top 10 team, and he's an average top 5 team, which is really good. And then his record against just ranked teams in general is he's like a 750 win percentage in those games. His only losses in his entire career at Oregon are to teams that either won or lost the national championship game. That'll continue with this season going. Yeah, thankfully Oregon fans still love him because they should. But to other college football fans out there that call Dan Lanning anything but a great coach I know I'm biased, but objectively wrong. Look at the stats. If you can find me any realistic stat that would show me otherwise, I would like to see that. But yeah, close it out there.
To put a cap on this conversation before we move on to the last convo. Kind of joking, obviously, but look at Dan Lanning's 4 years at Oregon. 10-3, missed the playoffs. I think 10-2, 11-2, barely missed the playoffs, lost 2 or 3 games to Washington. So that's growth. Then year 3, win the Big Ten title, go undefeated, get blown out in the first round of the playoff. In year 4 this year, you go make it to the second round of the college football playoff, get blown out there. I mean, you make it to the third round of the college football playoff, get blown out there. So all I'll say is every year we've gotten one better. Next year, put your books in FanDuel, DraftKings, whatever you got. Oregon will be getting blown out in the national title game next season before they officially win the national title in 2 years. Because if we're just on an upward linear trajectory, that's what Oregon's expecting to do in the next 2 years.
Maybe Dan will prove your winning isn't linear wrong. We'll see. That's the trajectory if it was to happen.
That would be extra heartbreaking. All right. One final conversation to have before we end this show. Started expecting to have only three topics to talk about, 2 of them being games, and this third one, and then we got 2 breaking news pieces. Transfer portal HQ. I think this is just going to be at least all of January, maybe most of February, a topic on our show. Jace, where do you want to start with who's in the portal? Because a bunch of kids have entered the portal today alone.
Yeah, I'll start with a team that had some big wins. I'm going to start with Texas here. 2 big wins for them today. Win number 1, Cam Coleman, wide receiver out of Alabama. He was a 5-star in high school. I believe he was a 5-star by 24/7 in the transfer portal. He's a freak athlete. He's going to be a superstar wide receiver. So Texas gets their star receiver. And that's big that they got Cam Coleman because there were rumors that he might be going elsewhere when everyone thought it was Texas originally. And sounds like they had maybe forced Parker Livingston out of Texas. And that was kind of a controversial moment between the Texas and him. And it worked out for him because if they had forced him out and don't get Cam Coleman, that's going to be a huge problem. And then another piece to the offense, Hollywood Smothers, NC State stud running back from this past year, committed to Alabama originally in this portal window, then flipped to Texas. So he's just committed with Texas. He's not signed. But it sounds like Texas is really going all in what was probably going to be Arch's last season. Get Arch as wide receiver 1. They get Arch a true bona fide running back. And remember, if you guys all remember, all season, Farbo and I talked about it with Texas, their inability to run the ball really backfired on them this season. It forced Arch to have to force the football. And hopefully this is a move that doesn't happen. But then again, it was I think the running game wasn't a talent issue. They had multiple talented backs. I think it was an O-line issue. We'll see how that looks for them next season. I don't, at this point in time, I don't have any guess on the Texas 2026 O-line. But two big pickups for Texas and for Arch Manning. That creates a very interesting offensive trio right there, just in those three names alone.
I'm not going to lie. Just look at their offense for next year. Quarterback Arch, Hollywood Smothers, and Raleek Brown from ASU at running back. Cam Coleman, Ryan Wingo, Emmett Mosley, wide receiver, and then Townsend and Masunas at tight end. If they have an ounce of protection from their offensive line, not like the terrible offensive line that Justin Herbert gets annually with the Chargers, but like if they have an ounce of protection from their offensive line, they should put up points and put up points in a hurry. Whatever you think of Arch, that is too much offensive skill power to not be really damn good. So that's that. I'm already predicting Texas is going to be number one on a lot of big boards next season, entering the season. You were absolutely right. Offensive line matters the most there. We already mentioned Deuce Knight going to Ole Miss. An interesting one for the two of us. Dylan Raiola visited Oregon today or yesterday, and the conversation with that was, obviously he's coming off an injury. The Nebraska quarterback's in the portal. Patrick Mahomes a couple weeks ago was put into a Oregon jersey because he had a bet with former Oregon linebacker Jeffrey Boss on the Texas Tech Oregon game. Obviously, with Oregon winning, Texas Tech losing, Mahomes had to wear an Oregon jersey. So Dylan Raiola now wants to go to Oregon. The interesting part, though, with Dylan, it's been reported that he wants to pull a Dante Moore. And in saying that, is if Dante Moore comes back, he will still choose Oregon if Oregon's offer is there. And he will come into Oregon, sit behind Dante for a year, and then be the Oregon Ducks quarterback in 2027. I'm curious, man. This is obviously the new college football. As Oregon fans or as any fans of any program, if you're a big shot program, you're not going to be developing your own freshman quarterback anymore. Look at USC. They lost Husan Longstreet, 5-star talented quarterback with a big ass arm. I thought he might end up at Oregon. That's what USC fans are saying right now. I don't know, man. Is it like spots are filling up and Dylan Raiola's would be Dylan Raiola's best spot, or is it like he genuinely wants to go sit for a year at Oregon?
It's a great. We saw with Dante Moore as a freshman at UCLA. He showed flashes, and you could tell that he looked like he had the ability to be a high-end quarterback. But there were a lot of games where you could tell the game was just moving a little too quickly for him. He didn't quite have a touch and a feel for what was going on in the game. And I think when you make the jump from high school to college, obviously the game's faster. Players are quicker. Players are stronger. The sacks that you normally break, that doesn't always happen for you. The runs that you think are 20 maybe are 5. And guys struggle to adjust. And I think with Dylan Raiola at Nebraska, it's felt that similar way. You watch a Nebraska game, he'll make some throws where you're like, yeah, I could see this kid playing on Sundays for a decade. But then he also has just some bonehead plays where he holds on the football too long, or a blitz confuses him and he takes a bad sack or throws a bad pick. I think he's one of those guys that could really benefit from a year on the bench and then coming up and learning. And this is not a new thing. Like if you look at quarterbacks throughout history, they usually would just sit on one team for 2 or 3 years before they ever play. And that is how you got some of these like really fun quarterbacks that we've had. We're used to seeing guys pre-NIL, pre-portal era go to a school, sit for usually like 2 years. Then it was their third year where they'd get their shot. And that's usually when they'd be pretty good. And that's kind of how a lot of big names got made. Dylan Raiola, Dante Moore, no exception. Dylan Raiola looks like he might be no exception to that either. It's interesting too, because I think I'm with you. The age of developing a quarterback is right now, it's gone. There's just a lot of these good teams have put so much money into these rosters that you can't afford to waste a $18 million roster because you're going to give your 19-year-old sophomore a chance. Like you just can't do that in today's college football. So teams are going to be really portal hungry. But I wonder at what point, if ever, quarterbacks like Dylan Raiola, these big name 5-stars, stop going to these schools to play year one. Because Dylan Raiola probably could have went, and granted I know it was a legacy thing for him, but could have went to maybe a better school than Nebraska and sat. He didn't. He chose to go somewhere, play right away. Yeah, and changed it. I wonder at what point do these high school kids say, instead of doing the dance and kind of bouncing around, what if I just said, you know what? USC, that's my school. And I'm going to, like, what if Houston Longstreet was to ride it out and let Mayava finish his career and say, I'm willing to sit 2 seasons, but this third year is mine. Right now, that mentality is completely off the face of the earth. But it's doing the same thing. Kids are just they're either going to really good schools, not staying patient to just transfer and then transfer back to a good school in 3 years, or they are going to a lesser school, UCLA, Nebraska, somewhere where they can play right away. It doesn't work out because, newsflash, playing on a bad team as an 18-year-old is not a great idea in college football. And then they have to try and go figure out how to kind of save their career or restart it or revamp it. I wonder at what point does a high school kid say, I'm going to skip the dance and I'm just going to go here. I'm going to sit here for 2 years and we're going to give it a ride. We just really haven't seen that out of a elite level quarterback quite yet. And I wonder how many of these, like Dante Moore, it worked out for him. Dylan Rayola, it worked out for him. We'll see what happens with Bryce Underwood at Michigan. It sounds like he's going to stay, but success-wise, how that goes. It's just interesting how kids are prioritizing early playing time versus development. And we see these young quarterbacks, Dante Moore, now Dylan Rayola, kind of realize, like, oh, shoot, I made a mistake prioritizing playing time on a bad team versus learning. It's good that he has this self-awareness. That self-awareness is what has saved Dante Moore's career. Everybody wrote him off as a joke and a bust after year 1 at UCLA, and now people are talking about him the top 2 pick. Dylan Rayola, everyone's laughing at him, calling him a bust. Nobody takes him seriously. If he sits out a year and comes out and balls out, at some point, kids got to learn. Younger high school kids got to learn and say, maybe the move is picking what's best for me and sticking with it, even if that means I don't play your.
Yeah, and this isn't like directed at you, but I think that's just long gone. And that's just like the era of college football we're in. It's not like the old man on the lawn take, but it's like kids don't want to go through adversity anymore. It's Tom Brady was asked by Joel Klatt, like, hey, if Tom Brady was at Michigan, was like the 6th string for 3 years at Michigan before he finally got a start, whatever he was, before he finally got a shot to start and then took off from there. If he was that today in college football, would he have transferred by now? And Brady basically, he gave a very good answer, but he said, like, all I know is that era of football, at that era of college football, what he was in, he wouldn't have changed a single thing because he enjoyed going through the adversity. He enjoyed fighting for his spot. He enjoyed even the letdowns of not knowing, of not like, of feeling like he had the opportunity earned, but still wasn't picked for it. He enjoyed the big stuff like that. But I also think there's an aspect of, and you can't blame these kids. There's 32 5-stars or something, according to 24/7 every year. Let's say 8 of them were quarterbacks. There's not going to be 8 quarterbacks 4 years later from that class who are going to get selected in the first round of the NFL draft. These 4 to 5 years, 3 to 5 years, are these kids' highest earning opportunity of their entire life. Unless they go off and become a neurosurgeon and become like the best-selling, there's not going to be any other job within 5 years that can pay you $3 to $4 million a year. You like realistically speaking, these kids, obviously, they're all going to be projected to be NFL players. That's why there's so many 32 5-stars. Not all of them pan out because that's all projections. So I can't blame a kid who, in Raiola's case, was committed to 4 different schools, eventually flipped from Georgia to Nebraska because of the legacy thing, because NIL was becoming a thing at that point, and because he had the opportunity to start, because he was like, man, if I go there and I do well, I could keep boosting my name. I could keep boosting my NIL value and see where that can take me from there. I think like Husan Longstreet, I don't think he's a kid from Southern California. I don't think he wanted to leave USC, but the fact that Jaden Mayava is coming back next year and he's not going to be the starter limits his opportunity at USC to make generational wealth as a college kid. So like I'm not saying you're wrong, because I would love for that to be a reality. I just think that we have gotten to a level of college football where there's different calculations that are going on in these kids' heads, other than just who's going to prepare me for the NFL, who's going to coach me the hardest, what scheme do I fit in best. It's also like, I only have 4 years of eligibility. Let's not fuck this up, kind of thing. You know?
Yeah.
And these kids are dealing with that. Other than that, DJ Lagway, you mentioned him at the Baylor game. while we were recording our preview show. The next day came out that he had committed to Baylor. Then after that came out that he's not officially committed to Baylor and will be taking other visits. I don't know at this point what DJ Lagway wants. He's become a mainstay in flag for discussion, and I hope we get to talk about him on the field a little bit more. Michigan running back Justice Haynes weirdly jumps in the portal. I didn't expect that. I don't think it would be a money thing. I think Michigan can pay him just fine. I also thought he would be kind of the prototypical Kyle Whittingham running back. So I'm just surprised at that. Maybe he was more of a regular old school college football issue of like it just didn't vibe with the new coaching staff and want to have a different opportunity, which more power to him.
Yeah, that was an interesting one. I'm not sure. Michigan has good backs that are going to be behind him. From everything I'd heard, he was going to be running back one, coming back healthy again. And like you said, I don't think money is an issue at the University of Michigan. So that was an interesting move. That'll be a good case study of maybe for him it was just top dollar, or maybe he wanted to be the guy. Maybe they said, hey, we're going to do 60-40 once Kyle Whittingham's here. And he said, I want 90-10. That'll be a good case study of when you already have the position and you have a good amount of money, is the grass greener, to be determined. And then my last portal note, at least if you have more, please enlighten us. But my last one, 2 big time Penn State defensive linemen enter the portal, Xavier Gilliam and Chaz Coleman. Both of them are headed to Tennessee. So a big pickup for Tennessee, 2 big pickups on the defensive line. When Tennessee 2 seasons ago looked like they were going to be a really good team, that's when they had James Pierce Jr. That's when they had a much better D-line. This past year, their D-line was relatively weak. Just their offense would play fine in some games. Defense couldn't hang in there. So that's a huge pickup. That's 2 guys who I assume will start for the Tennessee defense next year and hopefully be a big addition for them. Also, as I mentioned, Ole Miss, chance to take kind of the reins of the SEC. Tennessee is a team that didn't have the year they wanted to, but definitely not a team to forget about. I know Knoxville, Josh Heupel, they develop well, they recruit well. They're flush with cash. They'll be all right. So that was a big pickup for them to kind of get back on.
And the Penn State thing is hilarious. I mean, today, Andrew Olish, their true freshman tight end, former 5-star kid out of high school, committed to Oregon. They had a running back, Tariq Coleman, commit to South Carolina. They have lost a lot of kids to Virginia Tech, to a bunch of other schools. Tennessee, he's an offensive coach, but his defense has been better than his offense the last couple of years. Iowa State, poor old Iowa State, has like 8 players, if that. I think, because Matt Campbell, as much as he loves the Cyclones, has pillaged the entire Iowa State roster so he can field the team for Penn State. And that goes back to what we were talking about with Will Stein and Tosh Lupoy. You can love a place, you can love everything you earned and accomplished there. But all of a sudden, when you're looking up and you're saying, the next thing I want to be judged for is how I do next season at this place. And I need to put all hands on approach of getting the players, getting the scheme, getting the culture built as fast as I can so we can hit the ground running. And at that point, it might hurt your old spot, but you got to make sure whatever you're judged for next, whatever you're going into next, is taken care of. And that's what Matt Campbell is doing there.
We'll see how it works out. It's basically Iowa State in the Big Ten next year.
Which I don't know how that's going to work, but other than that, Zay Horton from Alabama just committed to Texas A&M. Oregon lost Cooper Perry, true freshman wide receiver, Jericho Johnson, Zadavian Sims, Toby Hostrup, Ashton Porter, all Oregon backup defensive linemen. Today, Amari Washington, Mateo Iongale, Tatum Tuioti all announced that they are coming back for next season for Oregon on the defensive line, along with Bear Alexander. There's no spot for the backups to play, so they're all entering the portal. This is what college football is these days. You're not gonna have your secondary really. I mean, your number 2s anymore. Your number 2s will be on other teams, and you're gonna have to really develop and evaluate well so you have good talent to fill in his depth. Lots more cooking in the transfer portal. We'll get more into those on our Thursday show. Make sure you are sticking tuned with us on YouTube at Flag for Discussion, spelled out. We're on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, wherever you get your podcasts at Flag for Discussion, spelled out. We're on Twitter, F4 Discussion, and TikTok at Flagged 4 Discussion. Jace, you and I said this was going to be a quick show, and I kind of rambled too much today. Yeah,
No, it was a dual rant. I feel like we're out of schedule. We usually do Sunday morning. It's late on Sunday. We both have had very busy weekends. I think the brains are tired, and the breaking news also threw us a nice little fun wrench in there.
Yeah, I don't have anything to complain about temperature-wise in California, but we have Santa Ana winds right now, so my voice and my eyes, my nose, if you're watching on YouTube, I'm getting allergies like so bad right now. So that's been part of my show today. But you know what? I'm not sick, but everyone has their flu game and powered right through. Look, the national championship's coming on. We didn't want to preview too much about what Indiana Miami is going to look like. It's going to be a great game. It's going to be a lot to break down before that. My brain's tired. I think it's time to wrap up, Jace. From myself, Farbod Merkazi, my lovely partner, Jace Hatfield, this has been Flagged for Discussion.